Have you ever noticed that the hardest battles in life are rarely visible to anyone else? There are no weapons, no shouting crowds, no clear enemy standing in front of you. Yet every morning, the moment you open your eyes, the conflict begins. Thoughts rush in before you even sit up. Pressure about work, anxiety about money, doubts about whether you're doing enough, becoming enough, or wasting time you'll never get back. You move through your day functioning, responding, pretending everything is fine, but internally you feel like you're constantly bracing yourself. Most people live this way without realizing it. They assume this tension is normal, that mental exhaustion is just the cost of being alive in the modern world. But what they don't see is that they are fighting an invisible war every single day. And they are losing it not because they are weak, but because they were never taught how to train their minds. Modern life doesn't attack you with swords or fists. It attacks you with distraction, uncertainty, and constant stimulation. Notifications pull your attention in every direction. Expectations pile up faster than you can meet them. You're told to be confident, successful, calm, productive, and happy all at once. And when you inevitably fall short of that impossible standard, you blame yourself. Most people respond to this pressure emotionally. They react instead of choosing. They chase comfort instead of growth. They avoid discomfort instead of learning how to stand inside it. Over time, this creates a quiet form of surrender. Decisions start being driven by fear. Actions shrink. Life becomes reactive. And slowly, without realizing it, people hand over their inner authority to circumstances, moods, and external validation. But throughout history, there have been individuals who lived under pressure far greater than anything most of us will ever face, and yet emerged with minds that were calm, precise, and unbreakable. Not because their lives were easier, but because their relationship with adversity was different. One such individual was Miyamoto Musashi. At first glance, his name may seem like just another figure from distant history, a legendary swordsman from feudal Japan whose relevance ended centuries ago. But when you look deeper, you begin to understand that Musashi's true legacy has very little to do with the sword and everything to do with the mind that wielded it. Musashi was born into a world defined by chaos. 17th century Japan was unstable, violent, and unforgiving. Survival required more than physical strength. It demanded clarity, discipline, and emotional control. Musashi fought his first duel at the age of 13 and won. Over the course of his life, he would engage in more than 60 duels without a single recorded defeat. But focusing only on his victories misses the point entirely. What made Musashi extraordinary was not that he defeated others, but that he refused to be ruled by his own impulses, fears, or ego. While many warriors obsessed over technique, tradition, or reputation, Musashi was engaged in a deeper struggle. He was training himself to remain steady under pressure, clear under threat, and deliberate in moments where most people panic. This is where his life becomes deeply relevant to us today. Musashi understood something that most people never consciously grasp. The greatest enemy you will ever face is not external opposition, but the instability of your own mind. Fear, hesitation, anger, arrogance, and distraction are far more dangerous than any opponent. They distort perception, they weaken decision-making, They turn small problems into crises. Musashi didn't wait for life to be fair or calm before acting with discipline. He trained himself to be grounded regardless of circumstances. He treated every challenge as an opportunity to sharpen his awareness, not as an injustice to complain about. Most people today approach difficulty with a hidden expectation that life should be easier than it is. When that expectation is violated, frustration takes over. Musashi had no such illusion. He didn't expect comfort. He didn't expect certainty. He didn't expect protection. By releasing those expectations, he gained something far more powerful: control over his responses. This is the foundation of mental toughness. Not emotional suppression, not aggression, but the ability to remain present and deliberate when everything around you is unstable. There is a common misconception that mental toughness is about being harsh, dominant, or emotionally closed off. In reality, it is the opposite. True toughness is quiet. It is composed. It is the ability to observe your internal state without being consumed by it. Musashi was known not just for his skill, but for the psychological presence he carried. Many opponents were defeated before a blade was drawn, not because Musashi intimidated them through violence, but because he radiated certainty. His posture, timing, and calmness signaled a mind that could not be easily shaken. This kind of presence cannot be faked. It is the result of long-term internal training. In modern life, the battlefield looks different, but the dynamics are the same. The meeting that triggers anxiety, the conversation you keep avoiding, the responsibility that feels heavier than you think you can carry. Most people react to these moments by tightening up internally. They rush decisions, they seek relief instead of clarity. They distract themselves to escape discomfort. But every time you avoid a challenge, you reinforce a pattern in your mind that says, "I cannot handle this." Over time, this erodes confidence and self-trust. Musashi's life teaches the opposite lesson. Difficulty is not a signal to retreat. It is a signal to refine your awareness and strengthen your inner posture. Musashi was not interested in external validation. He lived simply, often isolating himself to train, reflect, and observe. This wasn't escapism. It was deliberate self-mastery. He understood that if he could not govern his own thoughts and reactions, no amount of external success would bring stability. This is a lesson that feels especially relevant today, when so many people outsource their sense of worth to social feedback, productivity metrics, or comparison. Mental toughness begins when you stop needing constant reassurance and start building internal standards that guide your behavior regardless of how you feel in the moment. Another critical aspect of Musashi's mindset was his relationship with fear. He did not view fear as something to eliminate, but as something to understand. Fear contains information. It points to areas where growth is required. Most people experience fear and immediately look for an exit. Musashi stayed present. By doing so, he trained his nervous system to tolerate pressure without collapsing into reaction. Over time, this creates a form of inner stability that others can sense. You become someone who does not rush, does not overreact, and does not need to prove anything. That presence alone changes how the world responds to you. The modern world constantly encourages emotional immediacy. Say what you feel, react instantly, express everything. While expression has its place, constant reactivity weakens strategic thinking. Musashi's life reminds us that restraint is not suppression. It is choice. When you pause instead of reacting, you create space between stimulus and response. In that space, power lives. That space is where mental toughness is forged. What makes Musashi's story so compelling is that his strength was not dependent on favorable conditions. He trained in hardship. He refined himself in uncertainty. He did not wait to feel ready before acting. He acted, observed the outcome, adjusted, and acted again. This cycle of deliberate action and reflection is the core of resilience. It transforms mistakes into lessons and setbacks into data. Instead of being crushed by failure, you become informed by it. As you listen to this, it's important to understand that mental toughness is not something reserved for warriors, athletes, or exceptional individuals. It is a trainable capacity. The same way muscles adapt to resistance, the mind adapts to stress when it is approached with intention rather than avoidance. Musashi's life is proof that strength is built through consistent exposure to difficulty, paired with conscious reflection. Not dramatic breakthroughs, but quiet, repeated discipline. This is why his legacy has endured for centuries. Not because of the number of duels he won, but because he left behind a way of thinking that transcends time. A framework for facing reality without flinching, for standing firm without becoming rigid, for remaining calm without becoming passive. In a world that constantly pulls your attention outward, Musashi's life calls you back inward to the only domain you can truly master. If there is one lesson to take from the beginning of his story, it is this: mental toughness is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing the internal chaos that prevents you from being fully present, deliberate, and grounded. It is about training yourself to stand steady in the middle of pressure instead of being swept away by it. And once you understand that, you begin to see your own life differently. The stress you face is not evidence of weakness. It is the raw material from which strength is built. Mental toughness is not something that suddenly appears when life becomes difficult. It is something that is built long before pressure arrives. This is where most people misunderstand strength. They believe toughness is revealed in crisis. But in reality, crisis only exposes what has already been trained. Miyamoto Musashi understood this deeply. He did not rely on emotion, adrenaline, or confidence that came and went. He built a mental structure so stable that pressure could not distort it. His discipline was not reactive. It was deliberate, patient, and relentless. And that discipline followed a few core laws that governed how he thought, trained, and lived. The first and most fundamental law of his mindset was simple but unforgiving. The way is in training. Musashi did not separate life from practice. He did not believe that training happened only in special moments, under perfect conditions, or when motivation was high. For him, every day was part of the path. Every action was either sharpening his mind or dulling it. This is where modern people often struggle. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait for the right mood, the right timing, the right conditions. Musashi never waited. He understood that waiting weakens resolve. Action, even imperfect action, strengthens it. Training in Musashi's world was not about intensity alone. It was about repetition, presence, and consistency. He practiced fundamentals endlessly, not because he lacked skill, but because he understood that mastery decays without maintenance. The same principle applies to mental toughness today. Discipline is not built through dramatic breakthroughs. It is built through showing up on ordinary days when no one is watching, when progress feels slow, and when excuses are easiest to justify. Each time you choose to act despite resistance, you are teaching your mind that discomfort is survivable. Over time, this rewires how you respond to challenge. Most people confuse motivation with discipline. Motivation is emotional, discipline is structural. Musashi did not rely on how he felt. He relied on what he had committed to. This distinction is crucial. When your actions depend on emotion, your consistency collapses under pressure. When your actions depend on principle, your identity stabilizes. Mental toughness grows when behavior becomes non-negotiable. You don't debate with yourself, you don't dramatize resistance, you simply act. This is not harshness, it is clarity. The second law that shaped Musashi's mind was his understanding of damage and benefit in all things. Every action, every choice, every movement carried consequence. Nothing was neutral. Musashi approached life strategically, not emotionally. He understood that even victories could carry hidden costs, and that certain losses could contain powerful lessons. This level of thinking is rare because it requires restraint. It requires the ability to step back from immediate gratification and consider long-term impact. In modern life, many people live moment to moment, guided by comfort and impulse. They choose what feels easiest now without asking what that choice is training them to become. Musashi would never strike without purpose. He would never move without awareness of outcome. This mindset transforms how you approach decisions. You begin to ask better questions. Does this action strengthen me or weaken me? Does it move me closer to the person I want to become or keep me trapped in old patterns? Does it sharpen my focus or fragment it further? Understanding damage and benefit also means recognizing that not all pain is harmful and not all pleasure is helpful. Some discomfort builds capacity, some comfort erodes it. Musashi embraced difficulty because he understood its value. He did not seek suffering for its own sake, but he did not avoid it when it served growth. This is a powerful reframe. Instead of asking how to escape pressure, you begin asking how to use it. Pressure becomes information. Stress becomes feedback. Challenges become teachers rather than threats. This way of thinking creates inner stability. When you stop chasing short-term relief, you stop being controlled by your impulses. You act with intention. You begin to live strategically, not reactively. Mental toughness is not about enduring pain endlessly. It is about choosing the right kind of pain, for the right reasons, at the right time. That choice requires awareness, patience, and honesty with yourself. The third law that defined Musashi's mindset was his ability to perceive what could not be seen. This is often misunderstood as something mystical, but it is deeply practical. Musashi trained himself to observe subtle details that others ignored: timing, posture, rhythm, intention. He did not fixate on surface-level appearances. He read patterns. He sensed shifts. He understood that reality speaks quietly before it speaks loudly. Most people miss these signals because they are distracted by noise, emotion, and assumption. In daily life, this kind of perception is rare. People listen to respond, not to understand. They look, but they do not see. They move quickly without awareness of the environment they are shaping. Mental toughness requires presence. It requires slowing down internally, even when the external world is moving fast. When you are present, you begin to notice when something is off before it becomes a problem. You sense tension in a conversation. You recognize hesitation in yourself. You detect patterns in your behavior that lead to the same outcomes again and again. Perception also applies inward. Musashi observed his own mind with the same discipline he applied to combat. He noticed when ego interfered, when impatience crept in, when fear attempted to disguise itself as logic. Most people are unconscious of their internal state. They act from emotion while believing they are being rational. Musashi refused that blindness. By seeing clearly, he reduced internal conflict. When you understand what is happening inside you, you are no longer controlled by it. This level of awareness creates a quiet advantage. You stop being surprised by predictable outcomes. You make fewer impulsive mistakes. You begin to anticipate rather than react. Mental toughness is not loud confidence. It is calm awareness. It is the ability to remain grounded when others are overwhelmed because you are not fighting reality. You are reading it. The fourth law that anchored Musashi's strength was adaptability. He did not cling to one method, one identity, or one way of doing things. He understood that rigidity breaks under pressure. Flexibility survives. This is one of the most important lessons for the modern world. Many people fail not because they lack effort, but because they cling to approaches that no longer work. They identify too strongly with past success. They resist change because it threatens their sense of competence. Musashi never allowed ego to trap him. If a strategy failed, he adjusted. If conditions changed, he adapted. He did not interpret change as failure. He interpreted it as information. This mindset transforms how you experience setbacks. Instead of collapsing into self-criticism, you move into recalibration. What worked? What didn't? What needs to change? This keeps you in motion instead of stagnation. Adaptability also requires humility. It requires accepting that you do not always know the best path forward. That willingness to learn is a form of strength. Mental toughness is not stubbornness. It is responsiveness. It is the ability to remain stable while adjusting direction. In a world that is constantly shifting, this skill is essential. Those who resist change exhaust themselves fighting reality. Those who adapt conserve energy and grow stronger. When you look at these laws together, a pattern emerges. Mental toughness is not about domination. It is about self-governance. It is the ability to train consistently, think strategically, perceive clearly, and adapt intelligently. These qualities do not develop overnight. They are forged through repeated exposure to challenge paired with conscious reflection. This is why Musashi's strength was enduring. It was built from the inside out. What makes this framework powerful is that it is not tied to a specific era, profession, or lifestyle. You do not need to be a warrior to live this way. You need to be willing to take responsibility for how you train your mind. Every habit you reinforce, every decision you repeat, every reaction you allow is shaping your internal structure. Over time, that structure determines how you respond when life applies pressure. Mental toughness, then, is not something you perform. It is something you become. It shows up in how you handle uncertainty, how you respond to criticism, how you face discomfort, and how you recover from failure. Musashi's life shows us that strength is not found in avoiding difficulty, but in engaging with it deliberately. When you stop running from challenge and start using it, you step onto a different path. A path where pressure no longer breaks you, but builds you. This is the foundation upon which everything else rests. Before tactics, before routines, before external success, there must be an internal framework strong enough to carry weight. Without it, effort collapses under stress. With it, even hardship becomes manageable. This is the mindset Musashi embodied, and it is the same mindset that allows individuals in any era to remain steady, focused, and unshakable no matter what they face. Understanding a mindset is one thing, living it is something entirely different. This is where most people stop. They collect ideas, feel inspired for a moment, and then return to the same patterns that created their struggle in the first place. Knowledge alone does not change behavior. Insight without application fades quickly. Miyamoto Musashi did not study philosophy as an intellectual exercise, he lived it. Every principle he understood was tested against reality. Every lesson was integrated through action. This is what separates those who admire strength from those who actually develop it. In modern life, the battlefield is subtle but constant. Pressure does not announce itself dramatically. It shows up as deadlines, expectations, conversations you would rather avoid, and responsibilities that feel heavier than you think you can carry. Most people respond to these pressures unconsciously. They rush, they tense up, they become reactive, they look for escape instead of clarity. The warrior mindset responds differently. It begins by recognizing what is within control and what is not. You cannot control other people's moods, opinions, or behavior. You cannot control unexpected events. But you can always control your preparation, your attention, and your response. This shift alone restores a sense of agency that many people have lost. At work, this mindset changes everything. Instead of being consumed by stress, you approach challenges strategically. When a problem arises, you pause before reacting. You gather information. You assess the situation without personalizing it. Emotional reactions feel urgent, but they rarely lead to effective decisions. Musashi did not panic when faced with an opponent. He observed. He adjusted his stance. He waited for the right moment to act. In the same way, mental toughness in a professional environment means responding with precision rather than impulse. You become someone others rely on because you remain steady when situations become chaotic. This steadiness is not passive, it is active awareness. You prepare more thoroughly. You think more clearly. You execute more decisively. Over time, people begin to notice something different about you, not because you demand attention, but because you do not lose control under pressure. This presence creates trust. It signals reliability. In environments where many people are overwhelmed, calm competence becomes a rare and valuable trait. Relationships are another arena where this mindset reveals its power. Many conflicts do not arise from actual disagreement, but from unmanaged emotion. People react defensively. They speak to be right rather than to understand. They escalate small issues into battles of ego. Musashi understood that unnecessary battles weaken you. He chose his engagements carefully. In personal relationships, mental toughness shows up as restraint, listening, and timing. It is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. It is recognizing when an argument is about facts and when it is about unmet emotional needs. When you are present and perceptive, you begin to sense what is happening beneath the surface. You notice tension before it explodes. You hear what is not being said. You respond to the underlying issue rather than the surface trigger. This does not make you passive. It makes you effective. Strength in relationships is not dominance. It is emotional clarity. It is the ability to stay grounded when emotions rise both in yourself and in others. Perhaps the most important application of this mindset is in your relationship with yourself. The internal dialogue that shapes your decisions is often harsh, impatient, or fearful. Many people wait to feel confident before acting. They believe readiness comes first and action follows. Musashi lived by the opposite principle. Action creates readiness. Confidence is not a prerequisite, it is a byproduct of engagement. When you consistently act despite uncertainty, your mind learns that hesitation is not fatal. Over time, fear loses its authority. This is especially relevant in personal growth. Starting something new is uncomfortable. You will not feel prepared. You will make mistakes. Progress will be uneven. Most people interpret this discomfort as a sign that they should stop. The warrior mindset interprets it as a sign that training has begun. Each challenge becomes a testing ground. Each failure becomes feedback. There is no defeat as long as learning continues. This reframing changes how you experience difficulty. Instead of draining your energy, it focuses it. To embody this mindset fully, structure is essential. Mental toughness is not maintained through inspiration alone. It requires systems that support consistency. Musashi lived with discipline not because he enjoyed restriction, but because structure freed his attention. In modern life, a simple daily ritual can serve the same purpose. It does not need to be complex, it needs to be intentional. Begin each day by setting an internal intention before the world begins making demands on you. This is not about creating a long list of goals. It is about clarity. Ask yourself what you are training today. It might be patience, focus, courage, or restraint. Writing this down grounds it in reality. It transforms a vague idea into a deliberate commitment. When pressure appears later in the day, you remember what you are practicing. This reframes challenges as opportunities rather than interruptions. Next, choose one action that expresses this intention. It should be tangible and slightly uncomfortable. It might be completing a difficult task without procrastination, having a conversation you have been avoiding, training your body when you would rather rest. This action is not about productivity, it is about alignment. When your actions reflect your values, self-trust grows. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. At the end of the day, reflection completes the cycle. This is where growth becomes conscious. Review how you responded to pressure. Notice where you stayed grounded and where you reacted impulsively. This is not a time for self-criticism. It is a time for honest observation. Musashi refined himself through reflection as much as through action. Without reflection, experience is wasted. With it, even mistakes become valuable. Over time, this simple structure reshapes your identity. You stop living on autopilot. You stop being surprised by your own reactions. You begin to recognize patterns and adjust them. Mental toughness becomes less about effort and more about alignment. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are directing yourself. What is important to understand is that this process is gradual. There is no moment where you suddenly feel unbreakable. Strength accumulates quietly. It shows up when you handle stress more calmly than before, when you recover from setbacks faster, when you make difficult decisions without excessive internal conflict. These changes may seem small, but over time, they compound into a profound shift in how you experience life. The modern world will continue to be unpredictable. Pressure will not disappear. Challenges will not stop appearing. The difference is not in the circumstances you face, but in the mind you bring to them. Musashi's life demonstrates that inner stability is not a luxury. It is a necessity. When your mind is steady, you are not easily thrown off course. You respond instead of react. You adapt instead of resist. You move forward without needing constant reassurance. This is what it means to build mental toughness, not becoming hardened, but becoming clear. Not suppressing emotion, but understanding it. Not avoiding difficulty, but using it deliberately. When you adopt this mindset, you begin to experience life differently. Challenges lose their power to intimidate. Uncertainty becomes manageable. You stop waiting for the perfect moment and start engaging with the present one. The true legacy of Musashi is not found in the number of battles he fought, but in the way he lived. He mastered himself before attempting to master the world. That order matters. When you do the same, strength becomes less about force and more about presence, less about proving and more about being. The mind you build through daily discipline determines the quality of your actions, your relationships, and your future. And that is a battle worth training for every single day.